blog. And some of the files are not transferring. So I feel like I'm going to have to do it again. Okay, so basically, we just left off at the point where I've testified against my ex-husband for his white supremacy, publicly advocating for nuclear war against America and offering to train like foreign bad guys, etc., etc. These four veterans, ex-military intelligence soldier and his buddies, were on this Army Reddit thread, and they saw that this dude claiming to be an officer in the Army was like saying all this horrible stuff. So they put together a 75-page PowerPoint that linked this username to my ex-husband, William Jeffrey Poole, and then they dropped it to the Army, and they also dropped it to the Military Times at the same time, because they knew the military would just try to bury it. 2 years later, I'm asked to testify against him. I do so. I'm going to read the little end of it for you all. Okay. And then they asked me the same question everyone is asking. Why do you think it happened? If, as you say, Captain Young, began one of the high-ranking brass, he's likely had this sort of ideology for a long time, for at least a decade or more, according to you. How was he able to get so far in his Army career? I mean, I'm looking at his records, and they are stellar. Top-notch evaluation, promoted always on time, good runner. It's hard not to laugh at the absurdity of all of it. I think of all the footage Tom and I have watched of January 6th, knowing how many veterans and active military are deep into extremism, and always have been. Now people are actually paying attention, forcing the military into situations like this, where they have to listen to people like me. Because, sir, I answer, he's good at putting on a face, at showing the Army what they want to see. Right place, right time, right uniform, right? I quote the ubiquitous Army phrase we all use to promise our members that anyone can succeed. No talent necessary. Anyone can be a useful part of the machine, even a high-ranking and powerful piece, as long as they put their head down and go along and don't make trouble. The truth is, the U.S. Army loves violent men that look like they can kill you with their strong, bare hands. That's their bread and butter, and that's why Jeff was a resounding success, even with all his extremism humming along below the surface. People full of hatred are great at killing people. And what the military cares about, above all else, is maintaining its power. It all made sense to me by the time I had finished reading the 75-page PowerPoint presentation that an ex-military intelligence soldier and his buddies had put together, connecting a random screen name on the Army Reddit thread to active Army Reserves Major William Jeffrey Poole. I hadn't been able to see the indicators so many years ago, having just come out of my own extremist prison. But looking back, now so experienced in studying the processes of radicalization into extremist thinking, in cults, in terrorist groups, in veterans that stormed the Capitol, I could see the truth clear as day. The truth about Jeff, the truth about me, and the truth about America. It was that thing I'd been trying to figure out since I was 15 years old and first arrived in America, alone and afraid. The reason I'd always been treated so much better than I deserved. Why policemen looked at me with smiles, but with suspicion at my brown and black-skinned friends. The summer of protests in 2020 had made so painfully clear to anyone who didn't have their heads in the sand that it wasn't just about bias. It was about white supremacy. It was about violence. It was the belief, conscious or not, that we were better, that everything we had was because we deserved it, and every struggle they had, well, Maybe they deserved it too. What I could see clearly now was that from the second I'd set foot in America, white supremacy had worked tirelessly on its mission to radicalize me, as it does to all white people, insidiously, quietly, offering us better treatment if we'll agree to uphold the systems that keep others down. Of course, Jeff claims the posts don't belong to him, that some low-ranking and disgruntled soldier is trying to set him up. I know Jeff had been the author of those posts, even if those men making the decisions don't know it beyond a reasonable doubt yet. I know because the screen name that had been used was an obscure word from a dead Germanic language, a term for fighter that is quietly used in white nationalist circles by those who call themselves the alt-white. It is a word I'd been introduced to when I was 19 years old, by Jeff, when he was only 21 himself. A word I had not heard since. The screen name, one of many clues that the poster in question had used, was Nibor. We have a chapter early in the book that is called What is a Nibor? And I'm trying to figure out this word. With all due respect, gentlemen, it's because angry, violent white men is who the army selects for. I finish. In the days that follow, I walk around my new townhouse in a daze, under both the news of my memoir Uncultured selling in a life-changing deal, and the sudden return of Jeff into my life. I am plagued by flashbacks, hearing his voice over and over again in my mind. All those words that seemed so innocuous to me at 19 years old, complimentary and like they would make me strong. I can't stop staring at the reflection of my stupid face in the mirror, wishing I could rip it off and discard it, like the many costumes and identities I'd worn throughout my life. Your perfect face, Daniella, the beautiful children we'll have, the most perfect look in the world. Your Eastern European beauty, those high cheekbones. I had often wondered why he chose me. Maybe it was because I seemed so lost, so malleable. Maybe because predators have an instinct for victims who are already used to being prey. And maybe my face, my perfect Aryan face, was also why he'd wanted me, and he'd mistakenly assumed he wouldn't have to contend much with the mind behind it. Yes, I'm an author. I wrote a book called Uncultured, critically acclaimed. New York Times loves it. It's on audio. I did the audio myself. It gets really good reviews. The book itself averages 4-star reviews. The audio definitely averages 5-star reviews. And now I am recording a second memoir that I wrote that is not going to be a book. So I've decided to make it a video memoir. I don't know what else to call it, but since I have 100,000 people that enjoy watching me read books and knit at them, I've decided to just read my own book that wasn't. I'm releasing it on Saturday. And if you like, you can sign up for my Patreon, which is linked in the link tree, and you can get it for free if you're a Patreon subscriber. And you can also get autographed copies of Uncultured up there. Okay, now I'm going to record the epilogue. Thank you. Yeah, I like that last line. Epilogue, Maryland, 2024. A little over 3 years has passed since Jeff was kicked out of the United States Army Reserves for his extremism, and I still have a hard time looking in mirrors without feeling creeped out by my own skin, my own face. I've been forced to think about what my life would have looked like if I hadn't managed to make a clean break with Jeff when I did. I wonder how close I'd come to being radicalized right there by his side, like Auntie Aurora had been, and so many other people, real people, good people, people we know and love. I'm still trying to figure out why I got out of the cult and so many others didn't. Still wondering why Tom and I didn't end up like all those veterans storming the Capitol on January 6th. I will probably be wondering that for the rest of my life. I don't think it's because I'm smarter or inherently more good. It certainly isn't because I'm special or chosen. I think of my mother teaching me to read in secret when I was little. I think of learning how to speak Portuguese with Auntie Hepzibah. I think of the curiosity I had for the world outside the walls of my communes, the connections I made with people in Brazil and Mexico, how I always suspected the world was so much bigger than what I was told, how I wanted to learn about it, how I wanted to understand, how I knew that no matter what the aunties said, we couldn't possibly know everything. To admit ignorance is a powerless feeling. It feels so much better to be right, to be righteous. And often, we sometimes do crazy things to hold on to that illusion. Sometimes we have no choice but to let it go. At 15, I had no choice when I was forced out into the real world, left alone to realize that all of my models for how the world was supposed to work were flawed. My powerlessness forced me to ask questions about how the world worked and why. I no longer had a group to provide me with those answers, so I had to find them for myself. For the past 20 years, in one way or another, I've been asking questions, so many questions. What does it mean to be an American? What does it mean to immigrate to your own country? What does it mean to fight for freedom? What does it mean to live on the margins of a culture? What impacts do the systems of power that control our world have on our individual identities? And to what lengths will we go to protect that identity when we feel it is threatened? Right now, in today's world, Americans are left with no choice but to let many of our past models go. Current generations are learning in real time about the toxins embedded deeply in all of the systems that make up our country, how our country wasn't built for everyone, but only for a select few. We're learning that the founding fathers might have been great men, but also enslaved other humans and built a system that kept white men on top to the detriment of everyone else. We're learning that George Washington's teeth weren't wooden and quirky, but real teeth pulled from the mouths of humans he enslaved. And as proud Americans, it's on us to stand up and say, enough. And as proud Americans, it's on us to stand up and say, enough. In times of systemic upheaval, times like we are living through now, when fear is running rampant and nobody knows what the future holds, or if we will even survive it, it's easy to turn to extremism. It's comfortable. When everybody thinks like you, you feel safe. When everyone looks like you, it's easier to feel you fit. When the world is falling apart, being part of a strong us, fighting to the death against an evil them, feels like salvation. People join cults for a sense of belonging. When the world feels tipsy-turvy, when persecution is right around the corner, ideologies that we previously would have recognized as extreme suddenly seem reasonable and appealing. The ends seem to justify the means. This ties to why it is so apparent now that the angry white man is turning on those systems. Cult research shows that the reason people join cults and extremist groups is because they are seeking. And right now, everybody is seeking, especially those who have been marginalized. Cult research also shows that the perception of persecution doesn't have to have any link to reality to be strong enough to drive someone into the arms of a cult, as happened to my ex-husband, Jeff, my friend, Andrew, and so many others who believed the propaganda that told them they were better than others, more deserving of being on top. And they are furious to realize the system is broken for everyone, and that the privilege they've become accustomed to cannot help them anymore. I still live with the question that I've lived with every day of my life. What does it mean to be an American? And I don't think I will ever be able to answer the question fully. I know now that no matter the crazy backstory, or that I will probably never truly feel like I fit in here, that I am an American. Like me, America is complex, with a history fraught with trauma and toxicity, but that nevertheless produces beauty. While I'm not the expert on what makes one person American and the other un-American, I know now that Jeff isn't either. I love America in the way that maybe only an immigrant can, with a fierce passion, but an acknowledgement that it isn't perfect, that we have much to learn from those beyond our borders, and that owning our past mistakes and toxic history isn't hatred, it's love. As a mother who loves my child more than I ever thought possible, my deepest desire is to raise a daughter who embodies the values that I cherish. I remind her every morning in our special handshake as I hug her and wave her off to school, chanting, "Be smart, be kind, and keep an open mind." In the same way, my desire to make our country better, to rip out what's rotting, to root out the toxins, to pursue a more perfect union, and to dedicate my life to helping America become something we can all be proud of. That is what makes me quintessentially American. The end. I thought there was something else. I feel like I'm missing a part of it. Well, I've talked for 2 years now how unreasonable it was that they gave me 5 days to record Uncultured, and then I gave myself like 3 days to record UnAmerican. So, thanks, Gregory. I saw the subscription. I also think I'm coming on your show again in a few weeks. It is my writing. It is the epilogue. I've been recording it for 3 days, and I've been live here. My birthday is this Saturday. It's the epilogue of a second memoir that I wrote called UnAmerican. So 3 days before I sold Uncultured, I got an email from the Army asking me to testify against my ex-husband, spoiler alert for Uncultured, for white supremacy, so he could be kicked out of the Army. When that happened, I was like, whoa, I need to write everything all over again. Like the whole story of my life all over again. So as soon as I turned in Uncultured, which looks at growing up in a cult and being in the military through the lens of group behavior, I started working on UnAmerican, which looks at being in a cult and being in the US Army through the lens of power, privilege, whiteness, otherness, and what it means to be un-American. Yes, my birthday is this Saturday. This is when I'm releasing the book. Last year on my birthday, I graduated from Harvard, 20 years after I left the cult. This year I'm releasing the second memoir. It's not going to be a book. It's just going to be a video of me reading the book because contract reasons. So like my publisher didn't necessarily want the second book, or they didn't want the second book. And because of the way book contracts are written, it's kind of too close to the description of Uncultured for me to sell it to another publisher, at least not without the possibility of getting sued. So it was just kind of done, and I started working on the research book that I'm working on now, The Culting of America. But the more I started building these platforms, and people are like, move to Patreon, we want more stuff from you. I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to release UnAmerican as not a book. So it is a very unpolished video. I don't know how many hours it is yet, but it is probably somewhere in the range of 6 hours of me just reading the book and knitting. And you can listen to it or watch it. It definitely won't be as good as the audio of Uncultured, because it's definitely not that professionally done. You will be able to find it. I mean, I will be advertising it everywhere for the rest of my life. So I will make big announcements on all my social medias on Saturday. You're going to be able to buy the video if you just want the video, or you're going to be able to buy a seat in a 3-hour special book club, and then you'll get the video. So if you want to like watch it and talk about it. You can do it that way. Oh, birthday twins! And if you just want to buy it, you can do it that way. So it'll be on my website. It will live on my website, which is www.uncultureyourself.com. You'll also be able to find it in my Linktree store, and I will talk about it everywhere else. Oh no, the internet's being bad. Yeah. I thought making it first I was just going to release the PDF, but that's actually legally more risky, and I feel like people like listening anyway. And like I said, my Uncultured gets mixed reviews, as does every book. There are actually 1-star reviews on Maya Angelou's Tell Me Why the Caged Bird Sing. Like, I can't even fathom who would, with their full chest, give Maya Angelou a 1-star review. But anyway, but then I go on. Oh yeah, I even took a picture of some. Oh no, it's on my phone, so I can't read it. I took a picture of some audio reviews last night because they're from TikTok people, and I was like, oh, this is cool. But that's the thing. My stuff is too controversial. Part of it is just the publisher being like, we don't actually know that we can legally publish all of this without this man coming to sue us. And I've just decided that if this man comes to sue me, I don't think the openly racist knife salesman in Texas versus the anti-racist captain with the degree from Harvard and the 2 books and the always trying to help other people deconstruct their own racism, I don't think he's going to be the sympathetic one to the jury. This is kind of the same decision I make about talking about Jeremy Spencer of Fleetwood Mac, who is Uncle Jerry, my horrible abuser, in the cult, because, and every time I talk about Fleetwood Mac and its connection to Children of God, people tag Fleetwood Mac in it, and they're like, I hope they sue you. And I'm like, I hope they sue me too. If Fleetwood Mac sued me, my books would instantly be bestsellers, probably for the rest of my life. I mean, you can sue anyone for accusing you of a crime that they can't prove that you did. So, for example, even though, this is not even suing, but for example, even though there are 4,000 pages of links accusing Jeremy Spencer of Fleetwood Mac of being a pedophile, that's why my lawyer let me use the undisguised Uncle Jerry from a famous band in Uncultured. But Wikipedia will not let us put 1 line about his abuse unless there's a conviction. So, I mean, even in Uncultured, the question was can we out somebody? Because I'm talking about how he told me he used to be gay. And the answer was his photo in his senior yearbook of high school is glitter on the face, cheetah spots in the hair. I did not out this man. He put himself back in the closet. But, and then they only, I think people should stop listening to them. So what I can say is that the Children of God, the world's worst pedophile cult, supported itself for 50 years on royalty and the name of Fleetwood Mac. And people get really mad at me. They're like, he left in 1972. And I'm like, if you don't understand that a band's current popularity makes their back catalog more popular, I have 3 words for you: Taylor Swift and why. But also, the Children of God had Jeremy Spencer run the music program. So then every single CD, audio file, whatever it was of music and video that was millions and millions of them sold around the world, as these were produced by one of the founding members of Fleetwood Mac. It's almost done, 93%.
Did you put my drive downstairs?
It's almost done.
Huh?
It's almost done,
Oh.
93%. And he hosted concerts all around the world, especially in India. He does a lot of concerts, again, under this name, and raised money. And then everyone's like, well, that's fine. And also Mick Fleetwood planned a tour with him in 2016. And the tour was shut down when members of the Children of God called every single venue and told them who he was. Not to worry though, Mick Fleetwood planned another tour with him in 2020. So like these men have always supported it. And I'm even a little miffed at Stevie Nicks because she could have said something in the past however many years it's been. She could have just done anything to support the children who were harmed by a connection to this band, but no, they didn't. So anyway, my shirt means cults pop up in times of social turmoil when people are asking questions about systems and realizing they don't work for them and wanting to tear them down. In my other book that I'm writing, The Culting of America, I have a chapter called The Skinny White Woman, which you can find here on TikTok, you can find in my folder called The Culting of America. And at the very end of it, I say, like, we, the skinny white women, have to stop playing the game and, like, be ready to tear this thing down. And someone asked me to make a t-shirt of it, so I did. And I think I got my glasses on Amazon. Nobody's for cults. This is such a strange question. But one of the main questions I get asked when I tell people that I grew up in a cult or I'm a cult survivor, they'll be like, but you're not still in a cult, are you? Nobody that is in a cult says that they are in a cult. I am a scholar of cults, extreme groups, and extremely bad leadership. And I am also a person that actually knows what cults are like, which the majority of Americans do not, even if they've survived one, because I've turned my experience into expertise. And part of what I do is I spend my time showing people. Like, it sounds like you'll have nothing in common with a girl who grew up in one of the world's worst sex cults and a girl who went to war in the US Army. But if you read the book, you will relate to it everywhere. Because as I say, there's a reason that I'm writing a book called The Culting of America. And in most of my videos, I have this 10-part list of what makes a cult. And so many Americans will say, well, then that's like every group. I'm like, but the fascinating part is nobody that is not American has ever said that to me. Like, I've never had a European be like, this sounds like every group in our society. Because it's not. Americans are specifically cult-like. We love a binary. We love a good versus bad, and that's just not how the world works. The number one question I get asked is, can you have a good cult? And I don't feel like I get asked that question by non-Americans. And I feel like it's actually like a really American and also patriarchal thing to just think that, like, so we'll take the really bad groups and then we'll just flip them. And it's also very American to consider something good as long as it's making money. So Zappos, primo example, 100% a cult from the beginning. As was WeWork, as was Theranos. But Zappos was really interesting because I was at Harvard studying these Harvard business cases where they're just like worshiping Tony Hsieh and Zappos. And I'm like, the man's a cult leader. It's here in all the lines. Like, you can just see it. And so I was keeping my little eye on Zappos, and I was in no way surprised when the suicides began. Then he got ousted, and then he died in a suspicious fire. Which, by the way, violent accidental deaths, especially for men after cult experiences, very common. I think it's part of the risky behavior. I see in women, we see a lot of the risky behavior being like, I'm going to get under whoever I can so that I don't have to be alone. And with men, we see a lot of the risky behavior being like, I'm going to jump to that building over there. We can be friends. I mean, I'm on here every day. I'm usually live every day too. So it's obviously a parasocial kind of thing. However, I do have in Maryland, every month, first Thursday of the month, we have a cult happy hour. We also get quite a few former AA people, but it's still a happy hour anyway. I do want to collab with the decolonial authors to gain visibility. I think there's a very interesting thing about, so I talk about the sacred assumption, right? And this I came up with after like 15 years of being asked, like, how do people fall for these things? Like, exactly how does a guru say sex with children for God and 10,000 people don't walk away, right? And like everyone thinks they're gonna walk away. I come from the people that didn't walk away. Actually, my grandma walked away, so I come from half of the people that didn't walk away. And I swear to God, when I figured this out, I was like in bed one night and I just sat bolt upright and I was like, hold nothing sacred. That's it. And so I've written this whole chapter on the sacred assumption. AA is my example. The chapter is called But We're Saving Lives. And the sacred assumption is the one thing in every cult-like group. There's one thing that you have to believe that in order to be a member in good standing. And under the sacred assumption, you can justify anything. So the sacred assumption in Children of God is that this random white bro is the prophet of God. In Nexium, other random white bro is the smartest guy on earth. In the US Army, I think the sacred assumption is that dying for the American flag is worth it. And in Mormonism, the sacred assumption is definitely that Joseph Smith was the true prophet, whatever that thing that they have to repeat to them all the time is. So I think as soon as you start deconstructing cults, you see that, so cults usually are groups, right? Groups are stronger than individuals. Systems are stronger than groups. And we have three systems in this country: white supremacy, patriarchy, and capitalism, that are all, in my opinion, very cult-like systems. And none of us can really get out of them, especially capitalism. It's also why people have a really hard time when I show them that the military is a cult, because whether you like it or not, we are all supporting the military with our tax dollars. And that is very cognitive dissonance once you realize, like, it's not a wonderful institution. Yes, but if you hold freedom of thought and autonomy to be sacred, then a nefarious person who has built a cult-like structure around freedom of thought and autonomy can take advantage of you. Literally hold nothing sacred. Like, it's the same thing as, like, no process on earth works for everyone. No group we're going to create is going to work for everyone. And because leaders don't want to give individual connection and individual motivation to their individual people, they just go study cult tactics and hire organizational psychologists like me to teach them how to manipulate people to give their labor to build their good cults. And so I think it's like a sign, like any leader or any organization that is promising you that their process works for everyone, clear con. Like, never happens. Has never happened in the history of the world. I like being a vibe. I don't think systems are always bad. I think that groups and systems are what is like, that is the technology that humans invented to allow us to have more power than all of the other animals on Earth. And actually, the story is the technology we invented. And because we can all believe in a shared story, we can build these bigger groups and bigger systems. The problem is that groups are stronger than individuals, and systems are definitely stronger than individuals. So even right now, right, if every white person was just like, boom, racism is bad, why do we do this anymore? We would still have so much work to do, because the system we are in is racist and white supremacist. Even if all of the men were like, patriarchy is not about horses, I don't want my dojo mojo casa house anymore, we would still have a ton of work to do to take down the system of patriarchy. And of course, what's really scary about AI is they are working all those biases in. I can't believe I just got asked if I've ever read Robert Lipton. Like, of course. I will say, yeah, I've read every single person probably that has ever published anything related to cults. I will say that I am the first and only that I know of cult scholar that does not give the military a cult exemption. And I'm also the only one with regular military experience. Because Margaret Singer, not to be confused with Margaret Sanger of white supremacy birth control, Margaret Singer, godmotheress of cult studies and army psychologist, was vehemently opposed to the idea that the army is a cult. But you know what's fascinating? You know who doesn't go through basic training, which in cult studies we call identity breaking indoctrination. Army psychologists. So, but my favorite one is that most other cult scholars are like, well, you can't call the military a cult because you can leave. And I'm like, first of all, no, you can't. You can't just leave the military whenever you want to. But second of all, like, don't we spend all of our time teaching people that you can leave so it's not a cult thing is bad and is a stereotype? Like, come on. Anyway, yeah. So I call myself the disorganizational psychologist because I feel like what most people who study organizational psychology, which is just human motivation tactics, right? Like that's what we're studying. And then they sell their services to corporate America. And I was like, well, I want to sell my services to individuals, to help individuals. Because no matter whether we like it or not, we are stuck in this group of groups and systems, in this world of groups and systems. And yeah, it's hard to leave. Like you can't be a human right now and not, at least in America, and not be affected by capitalism, right? That's one of the most cognitive dissonance things for me. It's like, well, I hate capitalism and I want to rail against it all day long. Also, please buy my book and sign up for my Patreon because I need to make money if I want to keep doing this at all, right? So that is very difficult. The service member book club is not the same as the book club for UnAmerican. I haven't released the book clubs for UnAmerican yet, but this week I'm giving basically the book club members the opportunity to sign up first. I don't expect it to sell out because as much as I like to think I'm Taylor Swift, I'm not. But I will be releasing all of those, and I will also just make more book clubs if there is more demand. But right now it's Saturday morning, June 22nd, Sunday afternoon, June 29th, and Thursday evening, June 27th. So that there's a lot of time for no, they're not posted anywhere yet. It's all going to be posted on Saturday because it was probably stupid of me to not have it posted this whole time that I was doing this, but we live and we learn, but I've promised everyone. Yes, so I did start a women's service members book club. That is in my link tree and you can sign up for it right now. If you can't figure that out, send me a message. What we are doing is it's going to be a year. It's going to start, I want to say it's the first Saturday in June, which is actually like June 1st or July. I don't remember. Anyway, it's like book club / support group. It's $75, but I am giving away 5 free seats to those who truly can't afford it. Style. And we're going to be doing 4 books over the course of the year. So we're going to start with Uncultured, which is my book. We're going to read Formation by Ryan Lee Dostie. We're going to read Unbecoming by Anuradha Bhagwati. And we are going to read a novel called Playing Army that's just coming out by Nancy Stroher. And I think I can get all of these authors to come speak to the group. And then we're also going to be sort of reading Trauma and Recovery over the whole thing. Trauma and Recovery was this groundbreaking book about PTSD that came out in the 80s by Judith Herman. And the reason I think it's so important, the reason everyone thinks it's important is because it put sexual violence, which is usually suffered by women and children, and war violence, which is usually suffered by men, as the same. These are the same in what they cause in PTSD. It's the same symptoms. It's trauma. But for a lot of women veterans, we have both of those. So it's doubly important and interesting. So yes, I'm also going to send out these emails to the women veteran thing. But yeah, check it out. If you have friends, let them know. I mean, it really is. I'm trying to get active duty and veteran women and non-binary and just create, I don't know, like I wrote in the description, it's we have issues. Like we have all the regular veteran issues, and then we have all of these issues because we were women, and some of those are issues caused by the men. And so I've never seen anything created for veterans that appeals to women veterans in any way. And quite frankly, like the last thing I ever want to do is walk into a room full of male veterans again. And so this has always been kind of my thing, even when I worked in veteran services, and they were like, how do we get more women veterans? And I'm like, remember that we are women first, and we probably don't want to come to your t-shirt and beer sausage fest. Like we want to go to events that attract women, and we are also all very, very, very tired of being the only woman in the room and being assumed that we are somebody's wife. Like I will never forget, or having this, it was like a veteran tech event in Seattle, and the guy on the stage asked like, who knows what IPB is, right? Which is intelligence preparation in the battlefield. And I was like, me. And he looks over and he goes, oh, of course, the intelligence officer. Like everyone in the room looked over and then like double taked and looked over again. And I just like literally almost stood up and said, guys, 50% of intelligence officers are women. Like, yeah, the VA. I mean, literally every single time I go to the VA, and it is like they have to ask you, like, were you ever sexually assaulted or harassed while you're in uniform? And I'm like, why do we even ask this? And actually, because I am thinking of all of my newest strategic moves, and one of those strategic moves is going to be to sponsor some legislation. I think that I am going to try to get a very easy bipartisan bill passed that says that every service member who gets out of the military will be enrolled in the VA automatically, because why the F doesn't that already happen? And secondly, if anyone reports in their outbrief that they have been sexually assaulted, they don't need to have any proof. They just immediately get assessed for PTSD. Like, and any woman that requests it, I think, because big difference about being a man or a woman, especially deployed in these last years, was like, so I was one of the first women that went out on like deliberate ground combat patrols with the men. And so like, they got to come back behind the wire after our 10-hour patrol being on high alert. And they got to come back and take off their armor and put down their weapons and relax and engage in post-war military fuckery that is how human beings survive. And we never get to do that. Like we never get to put our weapons down and take off our armor and relax. Like we are literally expected to patrol ourselves home at the end of the day, ready to shoot a colleague in case he decides to rape us. And then hope that even though we're not believed when all they do is rape us and we try to fight back, that killing them will make them believe us and that we won't like end up in jail for the rest of our lives. Yes. What female hasn't experienced it to some extent? I get that in the whole world, but this is why the extreme story makes sense. Because like on every army base, there is a place that women will be warned not to go. Women in uniform, spouses of people, friends visiting of people, and like, how is there anywhere on a US military base that is dangerous to go? If there was anywhere, if there was the tiniest corner that was too dangerous for soldiers to go to, meaning the men, it wouldn't exist. They would mount an operation, they would clear it, and then they would guard it and patrol it to make sure it wasn't freaking dangerous all the time. Just like when there was a man running around Kandahar airfield knocking men out and stranger raping them, they caught him in 3 days. Yeah. On every fort, and there's this every army base, and like men are trying to argue with me about it on threads, and this demonstrates the problem with rape culture. And actually I think the the most recent numbers from Wounded Warrior really demonstrates it, which is, so Wounded Warrior program did a survey, and they suck at everything alive, but they did a survey that said that 44% of women who wear the uniform are sexually assaulted. Almost 50%. And every time I say that, military women are like, no way, it's higher. It's everyone I know. And most of the military men I see hear that statistic, immediately start questioning the survey methodology. And so same thing on Threads when I was like, every single military base has a rape alley, has a place where women are warned not to go. How is this possible? And there's all these vet bros out there like, where does a mansplainer get his water from? A well, actually. So tell me, what's rape alley in the Pentagon? Go to the Pentagon, find any woman that works there and ask her. She will be able to tell you immediately. You won't even have to explain. Anywhere. Oh yeah, my tattoo. Just got it yesterday. Can we see it? I'm gonna have to explain it 1,000 times. It's funny. I always have this joke that when like my husband knows when I don't want to talk to new people, when people ask me where I'm from and I just say Texas, and now I'm like, yeah, if people ask me like, oh, what's your tattoo means, and I'm like, oh, I'm an author. That would be when I don't want to get into a big conversation with them. I also realized yesterday that doing this was kind of like a thing which I never come back from. Like, obviously it's a tattoo, but I'm also saying like, I'm just forever going to be an artist and an online person doing my own thing, because I'm probably never going to get a professional job with a suicide survivor announcement on my forearm. But yeah, I lost my little brother last December. And so it's very, very significant to me for a lot of reasons, but also both for cult babies and for military veterans. Unaliving ourselves is often the way that we die. And I don't know that there has been a single year of my adult life that I haven't lost someone from this side or that side. And I mean, literally last December when I heard about my brother, I was just like, it still says it's 93%.
Does it need action? Is it waiting on an... Are there any other windows open where it's like waiting for permission for something, or waiting for you to do something?
It's not saying.
Also, are you in therapy right now?
No, I'm just talking to people on my life.
Just make sure I'm never doing the wrong thing.
Mr. Young. Yeah, when I heard about my brother, I was like, you know, on the one hand, it's just another veteran who took his life before Christmas. We deal with hundreds, if not thousands of these. And then on the other hand, like, it's my little brother. And he was one of these that got out of the military without being enrolled in the VA. I mean, I assume he probably forged some signatures in order to do that. But he was one of those that's like, I'm fine. I didn't go through any trauma. He would tell me things like, oh, I didn't go to war like you. I'm like, he was a medic in Germany where they had an accident at a close range with a 50 cal, which turns the person into what they call pink smoke. And he, as the medic, has to respond to this. He also, as a private who lives in the barracks, is responding to a friend who was just obliterated in front of his face. And he's like, I don't have trauma. I'm like, I don't have that much trauma from war. Like, but it was, you know, I'm fine. I don't have trauma from the cults. I just want to kill all of the uncles that abused you. I'm fine. And then we buried him. So one of my big messages to veterans is like, please go get your disability. Please go get your care, because you're not taking it from other veterans. And yes, just being in the military is traumatic. This is truly one of the things I believe. And of course, like, I told my little brother to join the military, so I'm gonna have that guilt forever. But you know, that's what I think. And when I say like they don't have the psychologists go through basic training, they don't have anyone that comes in, doctor, lawyer, etc. They get to go through just like an easy, what they call gentleman's course. Here's how you wear your uniform. But I honestly think like if they put in 2024, if they put military psychologists through basic training, they would have to completely revamp basic training, because there's no way that anyone professional can look at basic training and go, yeah, that does no harm. Absolutely does harm. Having your identity broken harms you every time. And just like running around and saying, when my right foot hits the ground, all I hear is that killing sound. Left foot, left foot, kill. Left foot, right foot, you know I will. And like, you don't think that affects you and that traumatizes you? Like, having your identity broken down to then be rebuilt as a killing machine, like, that traumatizes you. And nobody looks at that, and I'm just like, yeah, just being. So I think like my actual, you know, scholarly argument is that the military fits, like if you look at my 10-part definition of a cult, the military